Think about a penny you might have tossed into a jar decades ago. Now picture that very same penny, discovered in a well-thumbed collection, commanding prices far beyond its face value. In today's episode, we're zeroing in on two particular Lincoln cents, one struck in 1970 and another minted in 1997. Each of these tiny brass discs harbors unique quirks and errors that have sent seasoned collectors scrambling through coin rolls and auction catalogs. If you've ever wondered whether that dusty penny jar could suddenly transform into a treasure trove, stick around. By the end of this first segment, you'll know exactly what to look for when it comes to the 1970 penny and why certain examples trade for sums that make even experienced collectors do a double take. Back in 1970, the United States Mint was deep into the Lincoln Cent series, which had been circulating since 1909. While the basic design had remained consistent, Abraham Lincoln's profile on the obverse, the wheat ears design until 1958, then the memorial reverse, the production process was far from foolproof. It was during the early part of that year that a handful of Philadelphia Mint dies developed an unusual defect. The design elements on the obverse became slightly doubled, creating a so-called double die obverse, or DDO. This wasn't an intentional marketing gimmick, rather, it resulted from a misalignment between the hub and die during the striking process. As a result, key details such as the lettering in Liberty and the motto, "In God We Trust," appear noticeably thicker or shadowed, almost as if two impressions were slightly offset. Spotting these doubled lines requires careful inspection under magnification, but once you know what to look for, a genuine 1970 DDO can't be missed. Of course, not every 1970 penny carries that doubling. In fact, only the Philadelphia minted coins exhibit this error. The Denver, 1970D, and San Francisco Proof, 1970S, cents do not share the same misalignment. That rarity, restricted to just one location, instantly elevates the DDO's collectability. Even more compelling is the fact that relatively few people recognized the error at the time. Collectors in the 1970s were still digesting news of the famous 1955 double die, and it wasn't until the late 70s and early 80s that serious attention turned to the 1970 variety. Today, experts estimate that perhaps only a few hundred genuine 1970 DDOs survive in high enough condition to interest buyers, although exact figures remain elusive. Regardless, the simple fact that not every penny produced that year shares this doubling makes it a standout variety for anyone who prizes rarity and historical intrigue. When it comes to market value, condition is everything, especially with an error variety. A circulated 1970 DDO penny in a grading company's lower tiers might sell for a few $100s. At the time of writing, certified examples graded MS62 by a respected service typically command around $2,000 to $3,000, while MS63 coins can push into the $5,000 to $7,000 range. Jump up to an MS65, and you're looking at five-figure territory, often $20,000 or more, depending on the specific grade nuances and eye appeal. Auction records underscore just how dramatic these values can be. A single proof-like DDO specimen graded MS66 once hammered at over $60,000. Even without reaching that stratosphere, a gem-quality DDO can still net a collector enough to fund a nice vacation. Keep an eye on major auction houses and specialized dealers, as prices fluctuate based on overall market sentiment, seasonality, and the economy. Still, demand remains robust, driven by both advanced Lincoln Cent enthusiasts and investors seeking tangible relics of numismatic anomalies. Beyond the raw numbers, this 1970 penny carries stories that make it more than a simple rarity. One notable tale involves a collector who, in the mid-1980s, purchased a sealed bag of junk Lincoln cents at a trade show for what amounted to pocket change. Most of the coins were routine, but upon closer examination under a loupe, he spotted that telltale shadow doubling on a single specimen. Word of that find traveled quickly through collector circles, and before long, dealers were scrutinizing rolls from local banks, searching for any stray DDO examples. Another anecdote recounts how a high school student in Pennsylvania discovered a mint-fresh roll in 1970 that contained not one but two DDO coins, a true statistical anomaly given their low mintage. His parents still remind him that he could have used the surrounding change at the local diner, but instead he held on to those coins and sold them decades later at auction for enough to pay off a car, proof that a single unexpected twist in the minting process can ripple through time. Of course, not all 1970 cents exhibit flawless surfaces. The typical Lincoln cent composition in that era was 95% copper and 5% zinc, yielding a warm reddish hue on mint state examples that attracts both numismatists and casual admirers. But once a coin enters circulation, that copper can react with moisture and oils, leading to dark toning or greenish corrosion. Even within the era variety, a penny that has circulated for decades might show abrasions around Lincoln's cheek or rim, softening the doubled lines until they become harder to identify. For circulated DDOs that still show evident doubling, auction prices generally range from $500 to $1,200, considerably less than pristine examples, yet still substantial compared to face value. On the flip side, pristine, uncirculated DDO coins graded MS67 are vanishingly rare. When one surfaces, often in an unassuming estate lot, it can spark a bidding war easily eclipsing $100,000. If you're inspecting a 1970 penny and the doubling is crisp, the fields are clean, and the luster radiates without distractions, you could be holding a treasure that might make even experienced collectors pause in admiration. Even beyond the doubled die, there are a few peripheral errors worth noting, though none approach the value of the DDO. Some 1970 D cents exhibit die cracks that fan out near the date, creating spiderweb-like lines that catch the eye of specialists. While these die cracks can add modest premiums, usually in the low hundreds, they're more of a curiosity than a blockbuster investment. And proof enthusiasts still seek the 1970s proof cent, especially those struck on satin finish planchets which reveal softer details and more reflective surfaces. Those proofs routinely sell for $50 to $250 depending on grade. But when conversation turns specifically to 1970 Lincoln cents, it's the Philadelphia Mint DDO that rules the roost. Its combination of scarcity, striking visual impact, and a backstory tied to mint-level misalignment sets it apart. Keep in mind that finding a 1970 penny in circulation today is deceptively easy, most are common and worth face value. What makes a specific example rare is that doubling on the obverse. If you come across a shiny, red-brown 1970 cent that seems unimpressive, it's almost certainly one of the many millions produced without error. But if the design elements appear especially bold or exhibit shadowing, a closer look under proper magnification is imperative. For those who purchase a slab DDO, authenticity is backed by a grading company, but if you're hunting through raw coins, look for consistency. Every letter in Liberty should display the doubling, and the date numerals may appear lifted or thicker than on a normal coin. Condition plays a dramatic role. A barely identifiable doubling on a heavily worn example might end up in the hundreds of dollars, whereas a gem uncirculated piece can command 5 or 6 figures. No matter where your interests lie, be it filling a specialized Lincoln cent set or simply snagging a historic mint error, you'll find that the 1970 double die obverse penny lives up to its reputation as a standout of mid-20th century numismatics. With that, let's take a moment to appreciate how a manufacturing quirk transformed an ordinary penny into a sought-after collectible. In our next segment, we'll move forward a few decades to explore the intriguing anomalies of the 1997 Lincoln cent, and why a seemingly negligible error in that year's mintage can still leave collectors buzzing. In our next segment, let's fast forward to 1997 and take a closer look at a Lincoln cent that quietly made waves among collectors. By then, most casual users saw pennies as pocket change, meant to accumulate in jars or disappear under couch cushions, yet certain anomalies in that year's production suddenly turned routine cents into sought-after treasures. Somewhere out there, a collector or someone sorting through a stack of change holds a simple copper-colored disc that may be worth well beyond its face value. Let's explore how a few minuscule imperfections and minting quirks transformed a 1997 penny into an object of intense numismatic interest. By 1997, the Lincoln Memorial reverse design had been in place for nearly 4 decades, and the prevailing penny composition since 1982 was a thin copper coating over a zinc core. That shift, prompted by rising copper costs, introduced its own set of error possibilities. Zinc pennies tend to be softer and more prone to striking anomalies, especially when planchets aren't perfectly centered or the copper plating fails to adhere properly. Although Philadelphia and Denver each produced millions of pennies that year, only a tiny fraction displayed anything unusual. One of the most talked about varieties is the 1997 Philadelphia Double Die Obverse, DDO. In this case, the initial hub used to impress the master die tilted ever so slightly, causing certain design elements, most notably the letters in Liberty, the phrase, "In God We Trust," and the date numerals, to appear faintly doubled. Under magnification, collectors notice that each letter seems to project a ghost image just offset from the primary impression. It's not obvious without a loupe, but once you know what to look for, the effect is unmistakable. What makes the double die on the 97-cent particularly fascinating is its subtlety. Unlike earlier double die pennies, such as the famous 1955 example, where doubling is dramatic, the 1997 DDO is more restrained, often requiring careful lighting and a rotating coin to catch the distinguishing shadows. That subtlety meant that for years, many went unnoticed. Dealers only began circulating verified examples in the early 2000s after a handful of collectors reported spotting doubling while grading other coins. Estimates suggest only a few dozen Philadelphia DDO specimens survive in mint state condition, and many of those ended up in grading company holders. Although exact mintage figures for the error variety remain unconfirmed, since the U.S. Mint doesn't officially report error counts, enthusiasts agree that the Philadelphia variety is exceptionally scarce compared to its Denver counterpart, which exhibits far fewer instances of doubling. When it comes to value, condition dictates how aggressively the market responds. A circulated 1997 Philadelphia DDO graded about VF 30, very fine, might trade in the $200 to $300 range, while an example in EF 45, extremely fine, that still shows crisp features and clear doubling can fetch $500 or more at auction. Jump to uncirculated examples, and prices climb steeply. MS63 certified DDO coins often land in the $1,500 to $2,500 bracket, while MS65 or higher pieces, especially those with attractive, amber gold surfaces and sharp strikes, can top $10,000. One particular auction in 2023 saw an MS66 DDO penny trade hands for $18,750, illustrating just how high bidders will go for that elusive combination of scarcity and quality. Meanwhile, the Denver minted double die obverse variety, although real, appears slightly more frequently than its Philadelphia counterpart. Circulated specimens may sell for $100 to $200, and uncirculated examples typically range between $800 and $1,200, depending on grade and eye appeal. These values can shift with collector sentiment and the availability of certified pieces, so it's wise to watch auction records and specialized catalogs to stay updated. Beyond double dies, the copper over zinc composition in 1997 gave rise to other noteworthy errors. Some planchets failed to receive adequate copper plating, revealing exposed zinc surfaces that look almost silvery. Such off-metal coins often surface with spattered copper patches or large areas of naked zinc, making them instantly identifiable. Even mild off-metal clads command interest. A partially missing copper layer on a 97-cent graded VF30 might bring $100 to $150, while a nearly entirely unplated zinc blank struck with the Lincoln design, effectively a zinc core-only cent, can fetch $1,000 to $2,000 or more, especially if graded as mint state. Off-center strikes are also common collectors' targets. A penny with the design cut off by more than 5% of the surface can sell for $50 to $200, but if the off-center strike is dramatic, say, 50% misalignment showing substantial blank planchet area, values can skyrocket into the low thousands depending on the grade and overall eye appeal. Collectors sometimes share stories that bring these errors to life. One coin dealer recalls a customer who found a near-flawless 1997 zinc-only penny in loose change after buying groceries. it turned out to be one of fewer than a dozen known examples, and when authenticated, the owner received a six-figure price for what had been his morning coffee change. Another narrative involves a young numismatist who traded a modest silver dollar for a rolled penny collection at a local show. Among those rolls, she discovered a Philadelphia DDO and, years later, sold it for enough to fund her college tuition. These tales underscore how a seemingly innocuous misfeed at the mint can ripple through time and deliver life-changing sums, not just to seasoned dealers, but also to everyday folks who simply took a closer look. All that said, context matters. The vast majority of 1997 pennies are entirely common and trade at face value unless one of these errors or varieties is present. For the Philadelphia DDO, mastery of detail is crucial. Under steady, direct light and magnification, each letter in God We Trust, should split into two clearly defined impressions. The date numerals, 1997, often look slightly thicker on the right edge of each character, evidence of the doubled hub transfer. By comparison, a standard 1997 penny has razor-thin, crisp lettering without any shadow or doubling. If you're examining raw coins, tilt them slowly at different angles. The doubled elements catch light differently than a smooth, single strike. If an uncirculated example seems unusually reflective, with strong cartwheel luster and no surface blemishes beyond the doubling, that's when you know you might be holding something truly exceptional. Despite 2 decades passing since 1997, collector enthusiasm shows no signs of waning. Online forums buzz with fresh sightings of raw DDO candidates, and each newly authenticated specimen revitalizes interest in the series. Dealers occasionally offer rolls of 1997s for enthusiasts to hunt through, hoping that one lucky roll might contain a DDO or an off-metal oddity. Coin shows, both regional and national, regularly feature 1997 error cents in auction lots or specialty dealer cases, often drawing competitive bids from bidders determined to add the piece to their sets. For anyone who owns a stack of 97 pennies, the takeaway is simple: don't dismiss that copper disc as mere pocket change until you've inspected it under proper magnification. What appears ordinary might turn out to be the next big highlight of your collection. By paying attention to those slight shadows in Liberty, watching for patches of exposed zinc, and recognizing that even a small misalignment at the mint can translate into real value, you'll know exactly how to assess any 1997 Lincoln cent in your possession. With that knowledge in hand, it's clear why experienced collectors, and even those new to numismatics, view this coin as a prime candidate for both hobby enjoyment and potential investment. In our final segment, we'll bring together the stories of both the 1970 and 1997 pennies, reflect on what these errors teach us about minting processes, and explore how spotting the next hidden rarity could be as simple as checking loose change.